we must examine what happened when the first great Gnostic preacher, a wealthy merchant called Marcion, came to Rome. His arrival made a clash between Gentile and Gnostic Christianity inevitable. Helmut Koester explains the effect Marcion had.
He had read Paul's letters, and he had found that Paul spoke about justification by faith alone, without the law. If this was so, the Old Testament, the Jewish book of the law, had to go. The Christians needed their own holy book, and Marcion created it, Paul's letters and the Gospel of Luke, the first canon of the New Testament. The Roman Church, however, did not accept Marcion's views. He also had propagated radical Gnostic ideas, and he was soon excommunicated. But Marcion's attempt to create a new Christian Bible was a powerful innovation that had a great impact upon the Christians who had excommunicated him. They had to defend themselves by compiling their own New Testament.
There were a number of different and often conflicting Gospels in circulation for them to choose from. The Gospels of Thomas, Mark, Matthew, Peter, Luke, and John. The secret Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of the Nazarenes, of the Hebrews, and of the Egyptians. There was much agonizing over which of these should be selected and made official. The selection would need to have a wide appeal, but to exclude the Gnostics. It would need to affirm the break with Judaism and deflect attention from the original church in Jerusalem. And ideally, it would transfer any blame attached to Rome for the death of Jesus to the Jews. From the dozen or so Gospels available, the four we now know were eventually selected. But what of Paul? He was crucially important to the Roman Church, but he'd become known as the apostle to the heretics. Certain additions were necessary.
At that time, it would have been normal to change a document or to add to it to make it fit a new situation, a new generation. What was needed were writings of Paul which defended the Pauline tradition against the heretics. Thus, the letters of Paul to Timothy and Titus, known as the pastoral epistles, were written and added to the existing corpus of Paul's letters.
At least 5, and perhaps as many as 7 of the letters in the New Testament are inauthentic. Thus, despite its internal contradictions and compromises, the canon of the New Testament was presented to the world authoritatively as the Word of God. But the emerging Catholic Church could only achieve this by virtue of the other main factor responsible for its eventual triumph: the will and the ability to organize and administer. The architect of the Catholic Church's organizational structure was Bishop Clement, who was the first to draw a distinction between the priesthood and the laity. Until his influence, Christian gatherings were democratic and spontaneous. Anyone wishing to give voice or praise could do so. Some communities rotated responsibility. Very soon, the Catholic Church developed the hierarchical structure of bishops, priests, deacons, and laity, which has survived to this day. Each sworn to obedience and acceptance of church authority, which was exclusively vested in the Bishop of Rome. It was this factor which proved decisive in the battle against the Gnostics for new converts to Christianity.
The Gnostic Christians shunned authority. For them, salvation was not through earthly intermediaries, but directly by a personal and often secret revelation from Jesus or the Spirit. Now, it is not hard to imagine that for a new convert, the idea of having to achieve a personal connection with Jesus must have seemed pretty daunting. It was easier to accept your faith from the bishop. All that was needed to win salvation was to attend church and listen to the bishop.
In the face of such well-organized opposition, the Gnostics fell increasingly into disunity. Now the Catholic Church was the undisputed carrier of the torch of Christianity. But Christianity itself was still only a minority religion within the empire. One of the risen Christ's principal rivals was the god Mithras. His worship began in Persia, but like most things, eventually Mithraism came to Rome.
And from here he spread all over the Roman Empire. Curiously enough, above the sanctuary of Mithras, there is a Roman Catholic Church. Quite often in Rome, such churches are built upon the sanctuary of Mithras. Here you see that Mithras in the meantime has become a savior. With his knife he kills the bull, and the blood of the bull has a saving quality. The initiated into the mystery of Mithras had to be baptized into the blood of the bull. Christians are saved by the blood of Christ, and that is not the only parallel between Mithras and Christ.
The divine father of Mithras was Sol Invictus, the sun god who by the 3rd century was the most widely worshipped of the Roman deities. Here, underneath St. Peter's itself, is a 3rd century representation of Christ depicted as Sol Invictus riding the pagan chariot of the sun across the sky. A ritual banquet was a common theme in pagan religions. It found a ready parallel in the ritual of the Christian Eucharist. This is the Egyptian goddess Isis and her savior son Harpocrates. This, the Christian Madonna and Jesus. Many of the pagan mystery religions had similar rituals and symbolism to Christianity. So why did Christianity emerge triumphant? What other attractions did it have to offer? Unlike most other religions, Catholicism accepted women. Although they were denied office, they quickly became the lifeblood of the congregations. Many of the women attracted to the church came from wealthy families, and through their generosity, the Catholic Church became rich. At the same time, it displayed a strong social awareness, unique among the religions of the period. It used its wealth to provide charity throughout the empire. In return, it asked only for obedience. No matter how poor you were, if you became a Catholic, you could at least be sure of that most fundamental requirement, a decent burial here in the catacombs which honeycombed beneath the streets of Rome. And here, perhaps, lies the key to Christianity.